As we tend to do every year around this time, we're going to be taking a look at a select number of players who could be calling it quits this offseason. Most of them, with the exception of one case, have been playing with the grace of Father Time, meaning that, despite their accomplishments and accolades, time, at this point, isn't on their side. In this video, we're going to go over and evaluate the potential of each player on this list hanging up the skates for good. And with that, here are the NHL players who could be done for good very soon. Currently, the oldest active player among the top 5 major professional leagues in North America, Chara, at 45 years of age, has had one heck of a career. After shattering the all-time record for most games played by a defenseman at 1652, Chara has remarkably finished playing his 24th NHL season. With a Norris and Stanley Cup under his belt, Big Z, after representing 4 teams, has a lot to be proud of. However, last season for Chara was a slower one production-wise, as Chara recorded 14 points in 72 games played. Currently a pending unrestricted free agent, the defenseman's future still hangs in the balance. While there's no question that Chara's work ethic has kept him competitive this long, the real question seems to be if he wants to continue playing. As I mentioned before, this is and has been a running theme now for a few seasons. After every final game for Chara, reporters are flocking to him, desperate to know if he will be retiring thereafter. What we do know is that despite the loss that the Islanders were handed by Tampa during his last game of the season, fans were celebrating Big Z's legacy with cheer. In almost storybook fashion, Chara scored a goal from the point and not long after was given a standing ovation, as some fans likely remembered seeing Chara during his rookie year don the Islanders logo for the first time over 20 years ago. Interestingly, the opposing players participated in the same ritual post-game as other teams did when players such as Ryan Getzlaf and Dustin Brown finished their last game as well. With handshakes and hugs displayed post-game, it was almost like Chara was getting a send-off, and almost as if it was indeed his last game. With no official word on the defenseman's situation to go on, his retirement is looking more imminent than ever considering. Three-time NHL All-Star Keith Yandle proved to be one of the most dynamic defensemen in the league as far as the power play was concerned. After 15 seasons in the NHL, Yandle decided to make the transition from playing in Florida to Philadelphia instead. And upon his signing with the club, Yandle had one thing at the top of his priorities list: to become the league's top Ironman. For Yandle, his Ironman streak had become a thing of marvel. Back in 2019, for instance, Yandle, after losing several teeth after being hit by the puck, left the game briefly only to return in the final period. After extensive dental work the next day, the defenseman was right back out on the ice to compete thereafter. Therefore, after eclipsing the record with 965 consecutive games played, Yandle was honored for his accomplishments. But, unbeknownst to him, his streak would be ending not long after, but not by his own accord, as Flyers management had the decision to make Yandle a healthy scratch, snapping his streak at 989 games. And while it may seem baffling as to why we're going into this much detail, well, for Yandle, it was a sign that the team was looking to favor youth over his experience, meaning that what Coach Yo called an organizational decision was a writing on the wall that Yandle likely saw at that point, as despite his longevity, the defenseman had his worst season statistically last season with 1 goal on 77 games played and 19 points recorded. And similarly to Chara, the ritual that followed the Flyers' last game of players showing their respects to Yandle only increased the speculation. Even though his last season didn't quite finish as planned, there's no doubting that Yandle at 35 years of age left a lasting impression with the Flyers team. Former head coach Mike Yeo had this to say on Yandle following the team's final game on the season. Right to the end, he did everything he could for his teammates. We had him read the starting lineup tonight, and the guys were fired up and came out with a good start. I don't know that I've been around another player that is led by his teammates the way that Keith is. And obviously, there's the streak, and it was amazing to be a part of that. We're all very grateful to have been a part of that, Yo says. And yet another player that is seemingly every year in these videos is Jumbo Joe Thornton. For over 2 decades now, the forward has been an assist machine. Even though he's obviously so down at this point in his career, Thornton has already left quite the legacy behind in San Jose especially. After capturing the Hart and Art Ross trophies and winning multiple gold medals, the 6-time NHL All-Star could be retiring here shortly. At 42 years of age, with his best years of production behind him, it's hard not to wonder if Thornton will be following suit behind longtime teammate Patrick Marleau and making the official announcement this offseason. One factor that Thornton's future is likely hinged on is whether or not his team will be able to capture the Stanley Cup and bring it to Florida this postseason. After he decided to depart from the Bay Area for Toronto in Cup pursuit around 2 years ago, the desire to have his name engraved on Lord Stanley seemed to be the one thing keeping the veteran going career-wise. Therefore, if the Panthers are able to win their first championship as a franchise, I'd be willing to bet on Jumbo Joe hanging up his skates for good. Thornton, who currently ranks 7th for most assists in NHL history with 1,109, will be leaving a legacy behind even without a Stanley Cup in tow. As I mentioned before, there's one player on this list that may be retiring rather prematurely, and that is Montreal netminder Carey Price. After leading his team to the Stanley Cup Finals last year, Price endured a plethora of circumstances that kept him out of game action for the majority of the season. Not long after the Canadiens succumbed to defeat in the Stanley Cup Finals, Price underwent knee surgery and was expected to return to play by October. However, the goaltender's timetable shifted after Price enrolled himself into the NHL's Player Assistance Program. Therefore, after beginning to practice again in March with the team, much speculation was on whether or not Price would resume play between the pipes by the season's end. After battling a non-COVID related illness, Price eventually made his return for the first time in over 9 months to game action in Montreal against the New York Islanders. And in a way, the way he was received by fans, it almost makes you wonder then and there if it was indeed a send-off of sorts. Either way, after playing a handful of games on the season, Price revealed that his knee still wasn't fully healed at the season's end. "I'm continuing to get a lot of swelling on my knee. Due to that, it's been difficult to do things that I would consider well out there," Price says. When asked as to whether or not he'd be able to start in 50 or 60 games next campaign, Price replied with, "My honest opinion is no. I don't believe that in the current state it would be sustainable for a whole season. So in that regard, I have a lot of question marks, and fortunately for me, I got a lot of time over the summer to prepare," Price says. Taking all of that into account, the likelihood for Price to vacate the crease for good seems fairly high. As hockey fans, we've seen players retire before who were in similar situations. However, even if Price has to call it quits earlier than he'd like to, there's no doubt that the netminder will still be regarded as one of the best goalies to have ever played the game. After capturing countless individual awards, even if he doesn't retire with the Stanley Cup, there's no doubt that Price will be considered for the Hockey Hall of Fame.